And the great thing about talking about it's not a sign of weakness. And as soon as you reach out to someone and show some compassion, it's amazing what they're willing to share.
We know athletes are tough, thriving in a culture where excuses are not tolerated. It's hard enough to admit to a physical weakness, but what if a player is struggling with their mental health? Well, one of Canada's most successful hockey coaches says it's time athletes and managers started talking about this. My conversation with Mike Babcock in a moment, but first a look at how what has long been a taboo topic in sports is getting some attention.
Here's a 3-2 with 2 outs. Got him!
This past June, Toronto Blue Jays relief pitcher Roberto Osuna disclosed he was struggling with anxiety. It became headline news.
How have you been feeling over the last 24 hours away from the field?
Last winter, former NHL goalie Corey Hirsch wrote an article detailing the darkness that made him think about driving off a cliff. Both received the help they needed, but their stories highlighted the mostly unspoken topic of mental health in sports. Mike Babcock is trying to bring that conversation out of the shadows. The coach who guided Canada to 2 Olympic gold medals and is behind the bench for the Toronto Maple Leafs is now an advocate.
You know how seriously I take coaching, but you may not know I'm just as serious about supporting mental health.
He's part of an initiative called Ahead of the Game. He's partnered with the Movember Foundation and a startup called Babsocks. I met up with Mike Babcock at the Maple Leafs practice facility. Well, thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah, I'm great to be here.
I never thought if I would interview Mike Babcock, we'd be talking about a topic other than hockey. How did this become an issue for you, a cause?
A few years back in my home in Emma-Lake in Saskatchewan, we lost 2 friends in one summer. An 18-year-old or a 20-year-old kid at the time stepped out of a vehicle going 110 kilometers an hour. Another man lost his life. His son stabbed him while he was just on his computer. I didn't even know, to be honest with you, mental health existed. Didn't know much about it. Unfortunately, my family hasn't experienced much of it. But at the time, when I went to Jordan Church's funeral, his dad approached me and said, Mike, you got to help out, you got to get involved. And so that's how it started.
Now that you've become a little bit more aware of it, do you think back at all and think, okay, you know, maybe I would have seen stuff if I had looked for it?
Well, that's why I hadn't seen it, because I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know anything about it. But what we've done since is, I was telling you before we got on the air here, my kids are 24, 22, and 20. At that time, quite a bit younger. And the first thing you start thinking about is, what's going on in my own family? Are we being prudent parents? Are we talking enough to our kids about this? Have we educated our kids enough to know that if something's going wrong, we better be sharing it? And what you find out as you educate yourself is 1 in 5 Canadians are affected by it. That means 4 guys on my team are affected by mental health issues. So when you think about that, it's important to have an understanding and be able to communicate and understand what's going on with people, or at least try to reach out. But you're right, if I would have known, I would have seen it earlier for sure.
But let's talk about it in the NHL setting, because I find that fascinating. I mean, you live in a world where people are probably afraid to tell you, say, hey, coach, you know, my knee hurts. Like they want to hide that from you, right? They just want to go in there and play. What are the chances in the NHL that a player would tell his coach or even his trainer that, like, I've got some mental issues that I'm wrestling with?
Well, you know, I think you're 100% right. Our game's about suck it up. It's about digging it in. It's about being mentally tough. And saying all that, mental toughness and mental illness have nothing to do with each other. Clara Hughes is probably the best example of that. Mental illness and suffered from it for a long time. Olympic champion over and over again. Unbelievable mental toughness. But I think what you got to do is you got to be aware of what can affect people.
Has it changed your approach at all in talking to your players?
I've only, in my 15-year NHL career, talked to 3 players individually that have come to me to talk about mental health. Now, I've had a lot of conversations, you could say were mental health conversations, but only 3 guys that I've ever really, and we've had ongoing dialogue. But it's amazing, once we had the dialogue once, how you could just touch base with the guy. Hey, how you doing? And he knew exactly what you were talking about, made it easier. And the great thing about talking about it, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of illness, that's it.
We're old enough, though, I'll bet you 20 years ago, a player, it would be seen as like, that guy, he just can't cut it. You know, he is weak. Has it changed?
Well, you still got to be able to do your job. No different than in anything in life, is you got to find a way to bring it every single day and do your job. Now, is there a way to help people? Absolutely. Can dialogue help? Can medication help? Yes. Can support services help? There's so many things going on. And I think just by being involved in this, if one of your players knows, I think they think you might have a better understanding. To me, what you're trying to do is maximize the potential of every player of whatever you do. And so by doing that, they need to have a certain comfort level. And to me, that's ability to talk.
I do have to ask you this. I mean, in the NFL, they're confronting the whole issue of the link between concussions and you know, brain injuries and mental illness. What about in the NHL?
Well, there's no question that there's a lot going on in that area, and the safety and the protocol is way different than it used to be. But I think just in retirement alone, never mind concussions and retiring, at the end of your career, you've been the best of the best. You've been living this life. You've been ultra busy. Suddenly your career comes to an end. Maybe you're not a star anymore. Maybe you're not as busy anymore. You're trying to find yourself. A lot of guys just tell me at the end of the career, the emotional ups and downs are night and day different as well. So what part's concussion, what part's the career? And I don't know the answers to all this, but what I do know is if you're aware, and as soon as you reach out to someone and show some compassion, it's amazing what they're willing to share.
Game 7 of a playoff the night before, a player comes to you, Coach Babcock, and says, I'm sorry, you know, physically I'm fine, mentally I can't do this. Are you ready to deal with that?
No, and, you know, I don't believe it would ever happen, and because I don't think they'd come to you at that time. In saying all that, their health is the most important thing. And your career lasts 15 years if you're really lucky, 10 years, whatever it may be. Your life lasts a long time. Being looked after and being healthy mentally and feeling good about yourself and being healthy enough to look after your family is what it's all about in the end. And sometimes we have momentary setbacks to get to where we need to go. Now, these are tough questions you're asking me, great questions. I don't know the answer for sure. What I do know is that the people I've been surrounded with my whole life are there to help you. And I think most people are that way.
Well, it's a real pleasure talking to you.
You as well.
Thank you very much.